Hey everybody, we will get started in just another minute or two. Wanted to pop on and say hi, apparently also show you the boxes behind me as we've been clearing out the garage, clearing out the office, doing everything that we've got going on. So yeah, busy time over here. A couple of you are dropping in some notes down in the questions box about just kind of how you're doing. And it's funny, the first one that got dropped in there was actually totally overwhelmed. The second one that dropped in there was feeling totally awesome. And then the third one was I'm a little bit worn out today, but looking forward to this. So yes, I feel all of you. So we're gonna get started here in about 2.5 minutes or so. But I like to come on early, see if there's any questions that you have, anything that you want to chat about in particular. Happy to tackle any of that. And then, yeah, I do want to know how you're going, how you're doing, and how things are going for you. Somebody else just dropped in and said, you know, I'm a little overwhelmed too, but still feeling like I'm handling most of what needs to be tackled. And I think that's probably pretty true for a lot of us right now. You know, I feel that deeply on my end. I joke that by noon every day, I've experienced literally every feeling in the human emotional spectrum, usually twice by noon. And so, yeah, kind of an interesting emotional time right now, depending on what your situation is, what your situation might be. So, for the folks that have just hopped on, I see you coming in. I can actually see you. So again, if you're sitting there in your bathrobe or your ratty old t-shirt like I was about 20 minutes ago before I got dressed for this, you are fine. I can't see you. We have not started yet. We'll get started right at noon. But just if you get a minute to drop in the box and tell me how you are, I'd love to hear. It's funny, the person said that I'm feeling great. I'm feeling really awesome, totally awesome right now. Also put in a little, just a little note that says, they're feeling a little guilty about that. And I think that's an interesting observation. It's not the first time that I've heard it. I've heard that from a couple of my current coaching clients actually about, I feel really good and I'm a little worried because everyone else seems to really be struggling and this is my wheelhouse or I'm totally hitting my stride. And just to know that it's okay for that to exist as well and to allow for all of it to kind of coexist together. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I don't think it makes you a bad human being either. So feel free if you feel that way. Interesting. Somebody said, I'm feeling really out of touch with how I'm feeling today. I'm hoping to drop back in. Okay, I love that. And so if this is you or if it's anybody else on the call, and we're going to tackle this right before we get kicked off here. If you are feeling out of touch with how you're feeling and you're kind of like, ugh, I'm all over the place. That's usually how I describe it. I'm like, ugh, I don't know where I'm at. Try closing your eyes, exhaling completely. Get all the air out of your lungs, and then take a slow breath in through your nose and release it back out through your mouth, but take longer releasing than you did inhaling. And as you do that, see if you can pinpoint just one thing you're feeling. Just one. You don't need to be able to name all 20 that are swirling around in the maelstrom, but just name one thing that you're feeling. And then from that, see what expands from there. What else is present? And that's the question I like to ask. What else is there? What else is kind of in the emotional soup? And oftentimes what I find is it's really only one or two key feelings, but there's a whole lot of should that happens getting in there. And I feel like I shouldn't feel that way, so I'm trying to feel this way instead. Or, you know, I feel really great, but I should feel terrible about this. And so it kind of clouds it. So trying just to hang on to one thing that's true, one true feeling, and then ask yourself what else is present. Somebody else said, now that I'm adjusted to the new norm, I'm doing better, trying to give myself what I need, which changes on the daily. Freaking-lutely. It will change. It has been changing. It will continue to change. The best thing you can do is just simply pay attention to that. And I'll actually talk about that at some point. Okay, so normally I don't show everybody like the cardboard boxes and everything going on behind me, but you can see I've been doing my part to keep Amazon in business. I know they're really hurting right now, especially from the Team Lance household. So there you go. You get a look at that. Maybe I can scoot over the other way, cover it up. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and get started. It is 12:01 on the official Verizon time clock. At any point during the webinar, please just drop a note in the questions box if there's anything that you want to ask or anything that you want me to tackle, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we are in session 4 of the 4-part fear series, force versus flow. That was my theme, and I had to laugh because I actually came up with this like towards late, like November-ish of last fall, not anticipating what 2020 would bring. And this section, actually, this session today was supposed to occur in February. And instead, as many of you know, I actually suffered a miscarriage in February and had to move the timing of the webinar and give myself some time to heal and kind of process what I was going through. And I always laugh because there's something to the timing of the universe sometimes that of all the topics right now is when we'd be talking about reframing kind of as a strategy for managing fear, but also really for managing how we're feeling. So that's what we're going to dive into today. As always, this is produced in partnership with the League of Women in Government. If you are, even if you're not working in local government, because not all of you are, please check them out as a resource. They have amazing newsletters, funny articles, great resources, and they're just a really amazing organization dedicated to growing more women leaders in local government. And so with a mission like that, how could you not want to partner with them? So thank you to them for their partnership as always. Okay, this is funny. I left this in here for you. As I was planning this morning, I was like, okay, I got up early and I'm going to show him this like portrait of my daughter Emerson and her selfies. I have a Frozen shot, not like the movie Frozen, which is on repeat constantly in many of our houses. But in my last newsletter that I sent out, I took a screenshot of a webinar that I was giving, a broadcast, and the Zoom call froze right when I was making this like awful looking face. And so here's what happened for my life in quarantine slide today. My daughter decided to wake up over an hour early today, which totally took all my time. So for those of you who feel like you're not getting everything done that you want to get done, this is proof positive. I am right there with you, because this slide actually didn't get produced. So I thought for anybody that's feeling like they're underachieving, everybody's feeling this way. We're all feeling it. It's totally okay. All right. Most of you know me. I think almost all of you are pretty familiar. You might have a couple folks on here that are new. Nicole Lance, I'm the CEO of Lance Strategies. My background is in local government, almost 13 years here in Arizona. I'm one of the managing partners of a joint venture called Extraordinary Balance. We do primarily strategic planning, organizational development, training, and diversity and inclusion work all across the United States. And I'm one of the co-founders of Arizona Women Leading Government, another organization geared at growing women leaders in local government here in Arizona. But now I get to spend my time working with women leaders from all industries, all over the place, and it's really a joyful way to serve for me. So today, as usual, we're going to do content and Q&A. And like I said earlier, anytime throughout the broadcast, feel free and drop a note in the questions box. It doesn't go out to everybody. I can see it. I'll respond to it either along the way or at the very end of the broadcast. All right, so we are in session 4 of talking about fear. And remember, I always say there's 3 primary reasons that we want to talk about fear. We want to understand fear, and most importantly, we want to know how to navigate fear, because fear restrains us, it constrains us, keeps us small, and it derails us. And that's true on the personal side as much as it is in a work environment. Those are 3 really key impacts of fear, and that's why I chose to dive into these. If I'm committed to helping you get to whatever your next level up is, then this is one of the things that we need to tackle and make sure that we're talking about openly. Today we're going to talk about resistance and reframing. resistance and reframing, and we're going to go into a little bit of what I mean by each of those. So I want to talk first about recognizing resistance. So resistance, in my, kind of the word, the way that I'm using it, the capacity I'm using it, is anytime we push back against something, whether we are aware of it, whether we're not aware of it, and we're intending to, it's just kind of happening, where we have that pushback, or where we feel like we're being held back, we're encountering resistance outside, where something's like not letting us quite move forward how we want to. So thinking of it in those two kind of realms, if you will. I loved this meme. I found this earlier this week, and I was looking for visuals of like, how do you represent resistance? What does that look like? What does it look like in your body? And I came across this one and was like, oh, hell yeah. This is it, right? Here's Wonder Woman. It's fine. It's fine. I'll do everything. I'll do everything. It's fine. And then what happens sometimes is our bodies tell us it's not fine. And that's often one of the very first places that resistance even becomes apparent. So asking this question, what is your body telling you? Because sometimes our bodies are more intelligent even than our own emotional side of things, or emotional intelligence, if you will. Our body sometimes knows before we're even able to admit that there's resistance going on, or certainly, for at least in my case, wanting to admit that resistance is going on. So I want you to tune into your physical body as a way of learning, where am I encountering resistance, or where am I even creating resistance? If you have tight shoulders, if your neck is kind of cricked out and it's a little sore, or you slept funny. I woke up this morning and my neck was kind of stiff, and now a couple hours later, I get up at like 4:15 in the morning. Almost 8 hours later, I've noticed my lower back is tense, my shoulders are both tight now, and what's going on is I realize right now I am pushing back pretty heavily against what my situation is. Trying to work from home, my partner's at home trying to work from home, I have a 2-year-old here all the day and all night. Should we let her sleep here? Go figure. And it's hard. And there's been a lot of me that I think I've been wasting some time saying, I wish it wasn't like this. And instead, where I'm starting to flip, just in the last couple of hours, I've been jotting down some ideas. What can I make of this instead? What can I make of this instead? So look for that, where your body might be telling you something. Cue into that at work too. If you go into an interview situation and you're trying to figure out, is this the right move? Is it not? A lot of times your body has wisdom that your mind may not be able to access. So pay attention to how the decision feels about what you're considering. Next up, I love Britney Spears. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not like a massive super fan or anything like that, but I appreciate her. And this girl, she had a hard challenge. But pay attention to what your emotions are telling you. And so, this visual where, she kind of had a meltdown, and she, attacked the paparazzi with the umbrella and beat the car. And it was this huge kerfuffle, which is my new favorite word this week. It was this huge ordeal in the media. But we do this too, and maybe it doesn't involve an umbrella, maybe it doesn't involve shaving our heads, maybe it doesn't involve bashing somebody else's car windows in, but I assure you, throughout the day, if not throughout the week as a whole, those micro moments where we look back at the day and we're like, oof, I kind of lost it there. Ugh, slipped up a little bit. Ooh, snapped at so-and-so. Whatever it is, got really down on myself. The words came out of my head earlier today. I was moving something. We're very slowly trying to clean the garage. I was moving something out of the garage, and I didn't realize that the bottom of it was open, and so I was like trailing this like trail of old stuff that was like filtering throughout the house and the floors when I was literally just trying to take it outside. And the first thing out of my mouth was, "Oh, you stupid idiot." And I went, whoa, that's not a usual self-talk refrain for me. And so it was a good indicator to me of like, whoa, what else is going on? What are my emotions telling me? And in that case, it had nothing to do with the actual box I was carrying or the floor that I just vacuumed last night, whatever it is. but it's this other stuff going on in the back of my head. And so clue into when you're having those outbursts, what triggered it, and if it's not the specific thing that's the thing, what was happening before then, or what's coming up that might be going on. Those are good ways to recognize resistance. I always say friction and frustration are a filter. So anytime you find friction or you run into something that's frustrating, pay attention to it. Why is it irritating you? Why did it get your attention? Why are you in a state where that kind of like commandeered your energy for a little bit? What's going on? Those are really good places to say to us internally, hey, you know what? Lean in here. Let's look and see what's going on. And I like to ask when I bump into these, what frameworks am I using that might no longer fit? Where am I getting resistance or friction or frustration because I'm using a framework that doesn't belong to me anymore, whether it's my own, whether it's something that somebody used to tell about me, et cetera, et cetera. What might be going on where that's a clue to me that I need to do some work? So what do we do about this? What do we do? Recognizing resistance is great. Building that awareness is important. I want to share a couple strategies with you to actually help you navigate this. So number one, and this is where the name of this came from, reframe quickly. And I like this visual because if you look at what those plants are hanging in, they're actually frames, like picture frames that have been repurposed. And so when you run into something where resistance is there or where you find fear, because a lot of times resistance is actually born out of a fear or a fearful situation, how can you reframe that? Could you think of it differently? Is this actually an opportunity to practice? Is it a lesson you need to learn? I always say you keep bumping into the same lesson over and over again until you choose to finally learn it. And that's certainly been true for me, especially in recent weeks. So is there something else that you can see from the situation to allow you to reframe? I like opportunity. This is an opportunity to do X. I like practice. It's a chance to practice this skill or building that resiliency or whatever it is, or what good could actually come of this, and that's a reframe. What is the positive thing that could actually come about? How could I choose to look at that differently? Next strategy I want to talk about, fluid versus crystallized intelligence. And this is one of my new favorite concepts I've learned about recently in the last couple of months through a course I was taking. And I've really been playing with this, especially since working from home and quarantined at home, isolated from my normal day-to-day behaviors. And so fluid intelligence is what children have. It's what makes them look at a bucket of water and go, oh, a swimming pool. That should be fun. Let me hop in there. Versus as adults, we utilize crystallized intelligence, which we look at that and we say, that's a water bucket, that's not a pool. You have a pool right over there. You have a splash pad right over there, that's actually my daughter. In my daughter's case was actually true. There's like a little mini kiddie pool right next to her that she was choosing not to use and instead went for the bucket. So sometimes they do that. But fluid intelligence is the intelligence that is moldable. It's why children learn and adapt very quickly. They take in new inputs and they go, oh, okay. Or they look at something they don't know or haven't experienced and they say, let's investigate. There's curiosity present. Let's look into that a little bit more. And so they approach it with this very malleable, exploratory mindset. Now, studies have shown that by about the age of 23, adults typically only operate utilizing crystallized intelligence. And crystallized intelligence is, I already know what this thing is for. I already know how to do that. I know everything I need to know. And so we stop taking in input and we stop looking at things creatively. And so when we get into situations now in the middle of a global pandemic is a great example of it, where everything is changing around us. A lot of times the resistance is going to come from, I'm going to keep applying the same thing I was doing before and maybe just apply it a little harder because I think it's going to work. And instead what we need to do is lean into the fluid intelligence and say, okay, what could I make of this instead? how could this look? So many of us, and so many of the women I've coached in my one-on-ones, and even the teams that I've worked with, have really struggled since changing their work environment. And they've said, we're just trying to do what we've always done. And the crazy thing is, you can't do what you've always done. Everything around you is different. And so instead of saying, how could we keep this old piece of what we've been doing and make it work? Let's just try harder. Instead say, what's the right thing to do here? Or how could this look if we were to build it from scratch? Next one, challenge functional fixedness. Functional fixedness is the idea that, again, it comes from crystallized intelligence. We look at something and we say, I know what that is for. So functionally, I know what that's for. So in this case, the image that's up on the screen, I know what tires are for. Tires are for cars. Tires are for cars. Tires go on cars, they go on tractors, they go on vehicles, and they're the things that allow it to move back and forth and go all around. This is a great example where instead somebody looked at that and said, I'm going to challenge the functional fixedness of that, the identity of it, and say instead, could it be a really beautiful planter instead for plants? And this is what they made. So as you look around you, even down to how you're using space in your home if you're working from home, what your desk looks like, can you challenge yourself to look at something differently and try and repurpose it? And the point of that is it moves us out of crystallized intelligence into fluid intelligence. I'll tell you, one of my functional fixedness ideas was that crayons are for children. Crayons are for children. And the other day I ran across, miraculously in the home of a 2-year-old, a completely unused box of brand new crayons. And my daughter was already in bed, and I sat down with a couple of pieces of sketchbook paper and I colored with her crayons, and it was awesome. And it was good for me because it got me to think differently. And I actually sorted through a work problem I was facing. The other one, challenge your framework fixedness. Our frameworks work the same way. If any of you are 2 a.m.ers like I am, I have a tendency to wake up at 2 a.m. Fairly often, more often, I used to do it more often than I do now. And anytime I woke up, I thought, oh my goodness, I have insomnia. I have insomnia because I'm worried about something. What am I worrying about? And then I would find something to worry about because my framework was fixed, that if I woke up, it was because I was worried, and whatever I was stressed, that was my framework. And then I would literally find things to be stressed out about to justify being awake, rather than considering that it could be from something else. And that seems kind of silly, but that's where I was feeling. Okay, somebody asked, and it's a good place for it, what are some strategies to overcome guilt when you aren't producing or working at the same levels working remotely as you were on the job? And this is a perfect slide for that question. One of the strategies is to challenge the framework. Do you still need to be producing at that level? Is that still what's required? Now, if it is, and you're like not meeting expectations, that's a performance question that then we need to look at. What are the reasons why? Is it technology? Is it schedule? Is it inability to connect with others, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But start by challenging that framework. Do you need to be producing at that same level? Because I guarantee you, and this is probably true for you, and it's probably true for a lot of folks on this call or on the webinar, is you were probably overproducing before. You were probably, way above the bar. And now that you're like at just slightly above the bar, your gap is different. Your kind of framework on that is different. So start with that question and dive in. If it really is you're not meeting expectations, do a little bit more work around what's causing that, and really get into, is it technological? What's the reason? How can you look at it? If it's a workload issue, like you're just seriously getting assigned more than is humanly possible, with a lot of you are, I'm working with some of you on this, then I'd love to actually chat with you about how to navigate that within your work environment and how to maybe get some help dealing with that. Another great resource, Jen Lawrence is a productivity expert. And so if productivity is actually the issue, I absolutely recommend her, and I'll send out in the recap, we'll send out some information about how to find some of her resources. JenLawrence.co is her website, and she's amazing. Okay, use the pause. One of the other ways when we talk about resistance, when we're bumping into fear, one of the things that we resist is the pause, the idea that we might need to wait for just a little bit and then move on to the next thing. So try and see if you can use the pause for good instead of being very frustrated or resisting the pause. So some of the teams that I'm working with have said, our work area actually has less work now than we did before. What do we do with that? And I said, you know, maybe be grateful for a little bit that the pace isn't like full pedal to the metal, and enjoy that. And what could you do instead with that time? And that's going to work for you at home as a strategy also. So think of that as a potential option for you. Okay, just checking that. All right. Consider new perspectives, but I say with help. So I love this visual. That's not my daughter. But think of how you could gain a different perspective on what you are experiencing. More than just reframing, could you totally adopt a new perspective? And the reason I say with help is that generally it's helpful to have somebody else walk you through that. So whether that's an executive coach, whether that's getting input from a friend, one of the things I like to do is contact somebody that works in a totally different job than I do and ask them about my situation. And it's really cool because sometimes you get people that don't have a clue what you do on a day-to-day basis, but they can take one look at what you're facing and maybe ask some clarifying questions, and it's enough to prompt you into a different way of considering the whole entire situation. So that might be helpful. But again, I think the key point in this one is with help. So a lot of us tend to retract when we get fearful or when we bump into something uncomfortable or there's discomfort presence. Try to challenge yourself. If you're doing the turtle shell thing and going like this, reach back out, find one person to connect with. If it's me, that's great. I'm going to put up my email address at the end of this, whatever it is, but see if talking to someone different might be able to bring you a new perspective. The other thing is to do something like totally radical. Like if you're right-handed, try writing with your left hand or try drawing a picture with your left hand. Anything that takes you out of your norm and has you do something else. If you have a laptop, go work in a different part of your office or your house. If your desk is oriented this way, try putting it up against the other wall and see what that does. Because a lot of times you just need a little bit of a shift to help you make a much bigger shift instead. And then finally, develop a cadence of asking, is this working for me? And I would tack on in a work environment, is this working for us? I cannot stress this enough, not just in times of challenge or times of change, to be asking this, really curiously, but as an ongoing practice, ask yourself this question, is this working for me? Because if it's not, you have an opportunity to change it. And maybe it's not an immediate change you can affect, but it's something that you need to address over time. This is something that's going to really clue you into this. And this goes as far as if you're struggling with negative emotions or feeling overwhelmed, feeling really discouraged about where things are heading. What are you doing that's making you feel that way? One of the ones I eliminated a couple weeks ago was watching the news, any type of news video, anything online, anything on the TV. I don't watch any of it. I read what I need to read, or I skim it, truthfully, to make sure that I'm effectively informed. But beyond that, I don't consume it because it wasn't helping. It wasn't working for me. It was actually making me really anxious. So consider that. One of the other things that I was doing that wasn't working for me was getting up in the morning and working for 30, 45 minutes and then going and walking my dog. And what I found was that 30 or 45 minutes that I thought was supposed to be like the way that I earned the time out with my dog, I wasn't producing as much as I needed to. And so once I started asking this question, I was like, oh, duh, walk the dog first, then come back and work. Duh. and is a perfect example of an old routine I had that used to work that for whatever reason isn't working now. But asking that question was actually the key to how I got there. So that's the content I have. I know I tackled a couple questions along the way. If you have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the box. And we can chat those through. And if not, we might get you out of here another minute or two early. Okay. Somebody said I'm furloughed and there's a possibility I won't have a job to come back to. My employer says they'll let me know at the beginning of June if they're bringing me back. I'm having trouble using the pause. I'm so depressed I can do barely anything right now. So to you or anybody else in this situation, sometimes the best use of the pause is to rest. And if rest is what you are capable of or being called to, then just say yes to that and allow that to be the thing that you do. Especially in a furlough situation, your uncertainty, if it's we don't know if you'll be coming back or not, that's a large amount of uncertainty and that's going to wear on you. The same parts of our brain that register physical pain are activated in times of exceptional uncertainty. So know that your body is going to need more rest. So to you, instead of using the pause in terms of like traditional framework of productivity, how could you use that simply for rest? Do you have suggestions that can help with challenging frameworks and functional fixedness? Yes, literally just see if you can do one thing operationally differently a week. So if you always put your shoes on, right shoe first, left shoe second, reverse it. If you sit in one area of the couch, try sitting somewhere different, and then you kind of build on that. If you have, if you cook, try using ingredients that you've never combined before. Those are all good ones. And then again, asking that question, is this still working for me? Asking that and then answering it honestly once a week, or intentionally challenging yourself to try something different every week. Okay. Where are we at? Okay. Any tips for preparing for transitioning back into the office? I'm really having a hard time thinking of going back. Oh, I'm more productive at home and I want to be here with my daughter. That transition back has me anxious. Yes. Number one, how could this look different? How can I make this work? These are questions I want you to ask. How can I maintain some of these elements even though I need to physically be back at work? If you haven't asked that question of your supervisors, you might want to ask. There's a lot of places that actually are continuing to do modified work schedules or disparate work environments. So see if that is something that's available to you. And then again, find those key elements. What are all the wonderful things that you're experiencing now? Are there micro ways to build those in? Video chats, getting up half an hour earlier, shifting your work schedule, even just starting 30 minutes earlier so you can get home and have more time in the evening with your daughter. And then I think honoring the anxiety, what that transition looks like. Somebody asked, can you expand on what you mean by frustration is a filter? What I mean is anytime you feel frustration or you run into friction for yourself, consider whether or not that's something you need to filter out of your life, or if it's just something that's telling you. That really, for me, those are like little red flags saying, Nicole, look here, deal with me. So yeah. The current situation has resulted in extra work for me as we've had layoffs. Oof, how do I handle feeling overwhelmed? I actually just blogged on this for the International City and County Management Association. So if you drop me a note or if you look me up on social media, I've posted about it recently. There's 5 ways to overcome feeling overwhelmed. That's a current resource that I would offer you. The other one that Jen Lawrence that I mentioned earlier, our productivity expert, she has some really great content and tips around that as well. So yeah, actually, if you want to drop me an email, I'll see what I can send you directly to kind of tackle some of that stuff. And then somebody asked, what are some steps that help set yourself up for good or positive habits? Incorporate this stuff into your routine. I put some of this on my calendar, on my personal calendar, not necessarily my work calendar, of like time to ask this question. What isn't working today? What do I want to keep from today? And actually building that in has helped. And then I've actually recently asked a friend of mine to check in on me regularly, because I have a tendency to skip some of this stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, why do I feel like crap? And so what she's actually doing is sort of holding me accountable. What are your practices like? What's the cadence look like? You know, what are those things? But I think the biggest thing there is the best step I've ever taken was to give myself permission to do what felt right for me, regardless of whether or not it made sense to somebody else. I felt stupid. I felt foolish, or I felt like it was productive enough, whatever, or I should be doing whatever it is. But to give myself permission for that. So to you, I think that would be good. Okay. I know I didn't dig into the overwhelm one, but we'll get you some resources for sure. Okay. So we're at the end. If you are interested, one of the ways to use the pause, pun totally intended, is I am offering special coaching packages right now. So if you want some one-on-one work, or even in a small group or a cohort, if a couple folks want to go in together, I'd love to chat with you about that. So that's one resource that might help. I also offer weekly 2 video or live conversations, one on Facebook, Coffee and Connections, that's in conjunction with my business partner, Eric Bailey. The second one, Conversations from the Couch, and I actually join Jen Lawrence on here. So that's another one. That's actually an Instagram live on Fridays at 3 p.m. Pacific. And then we are enrolling and registering for the summer webinar series, where I'm really going to do a deeper dive into navigating uncertainty, because as a lot of us do go back to more traditional work environments, where we kind of handle this next wave of whatever change and transformation is, that I'm hoping to tackle some things that might be helpful for you there. So, okay. With that, here is all my contact info. If we're not already connected, please do. And I would love to see you out there. That'd be awesome. So thanks for spending the time today. Thank you for doing what you do, and continuing to serve your populations that way. And however you're doing it, please just be affirmed and know that you are doing a really good job at the end of all of it. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.